Good afternoon. We're here for 5 Minute Friday from the Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative in Eastern Kentucky with Jennifer Carroll and Robert Brown, and we're going to talk this afternoon about micro-credentialing. KVEC is a national and international leader in micro-credentialing and supporting educators to attain micro-credentials. They've had 2 summits here in Eastern Kentucky, and later this year we'll have a summit in Louisville. So Jennifer, tell us a little bit about how KVEC got into the micro-credentialing space, why you moved in that direction, and the power you've seen here in Eastern Kentucky.
Well, just a little bit of a background about KVEC. We are an educational cooperative serving the eastern part of the state. We serve 23 districts, which is about 139 schools, about 3,000 teachers, and over 50,000 students. So we cover a pretty large geographic area. And we try to meet the professional learning needs of both the teachers and the principals that we serve. And as you know, we've sort of been in a predicament with funding the last couple of years for professional learning. And rather than just offer free come sit and get kind of professional learning opportunities, we really wanted to offer a way for our educators to engage in personalized professional learning that was truly aligned to the needs of their schools and to their students and to their own personal professional learning needs. And we really feel like micro-credentials are a high quality way to help educators meet those professional learning needs that they have. So we started out through some partnerships with Digital Promise and some other work, and they are sort of leading the charge around micro-credentials at a national level, and we wanted to lead the charge at a local level around that work. So through a partnership with them, we have developed 6 micro-credentials that are actually hosted on the Digital Promise platform. And we're continuing to develop those micro-credentials. But what we're doing is really trying to curate the needs of the educators that we serve and really think thoughtfully about what are their professional learning needs and are there professional learning opportunities that currently exist that are the best way to help them meet those needs. And if they are not, then is a micro-credential a way to help them do that? And if it is, then we have the capacity here to develop those micro-credentials and host them on that platform. So currently, there are hundreds of micro-credentials that exist. So really helping our educators to look at those and determine if there are some that already exist or if truly a networking experience would be the best way to help them meet their professional learning needs, or if a mentoring experience, or if it is actually to come sit down and have a face-to-face with someone in that respect. So we see micro-credentials as being a component of a personalized professional learning system. Not the answer to all of our professional learning needs, but one of those components of a personalized learning system that will help our educators better serve their students.
So a question, I'm going to backpedal just a little bit for listeners for whom micro-credentials is a new idea.
Yeah.
Define a micro-credential.
Oh, I wish I could. No, a micro-credential, a lot of times people call them badges, but it's not the same thing. So a micro-credential is actually a clinical professional learning experience in which a teacher identifies their need, or an educator, because they exist for principals too. But let's say that I'm a teacher, and based on the needs that I see in my classroom, maybe through some peer observations where a peer's come in and helped me with some, kind of being that extra set of eyes in my classroom, or my principal has come in a formative evaluation and said, you really need to work on formative assessment. Every time that I come in, I see maybe the same 1 or 2 ways that you're formatively assessing students. And I think you can really, add to that repertoire of things that you're doing. So there are micro-credentials that exist for formative assessment. And it really engages a teacher in learning about formative assessment through resources and research. So it's really research-based. Then taking what you have learned and applying it in your classroom with your students. So we've always heard about job-embedded professional learning. This is truly clinical professional learning. I'm using it in my practice, in the context of my classroom or my school, with the students that I'm currently working with. So then I apply this learning with my students. I collect artifacts and evidence of that work. It might be video. It might be my lesson plan that I developed. It might be the formative assessment that I developed. It might be student artifacts. This is what the students did in response to this formative assessment. And I reflect on that.
So applied learning, in a sense.
Applied learning. Okay. How did this impact my professional practice, and how did it impact my student learning? And through that, you submit different artifacts. You would submit your artifacts. You would submit your reflections. The micro-credentials have a rubric to help you assess, have I really met the requirements of this micro-credential? When you submit this, it goes to a person. And I think that's what is so unique too about this. It's not an online course where you submit a assessment that's graded by the computer. It's actually truly an assessment. So for those 6 micro-credentials that KVEC has developed, we are the issuer, we are the assessor. So when someone works on ours, and we have people from all over the United States that are working on the micro-credentials that we have developed, they come to us. And we read those and we assess those. And that gives that true human element to it, to really understanding the context of how this was applied in a classroom and what the intended outcomes were and what were the results. And so it's
So last year when I attended the summit, the power that I witnessed was in listening to teachers, a group of teachers, talk about the power for them. And the takeaway for me was seeing that teachers were using that micro-credential individually if they had a problem of practice or something they wanted to perfect, something they wanted to develop. They were able to spend the time that they had on that micro-credential at their own pace and learn and apply that learning in real time in the classroom. The other piece that I walked away with was seeing a group of teachers go through a micro-credentialing process together as a cohort based on, again, a problem of practice, something they wanted to develop or perfect, and then go through that learning process together as a peer group and then apply it, evaluate the application, real-time feedback. So there was just real power, energy I could see in how they described their experience, that they really felt it was truly impactful on the teaching and learning environment that they were leading.
We had a celebration a couple of weeks ago with one of our schools that is in a project that we work with called Activating Catalytic Transformation, or ACT. And it's about building the shared leadership capacity of a school to solve their own problems through a action research cycle, a continuous improvement cycle. And they develop a theory of action. And in this school, it's Allen Elementary in Floyd County. And through their theory of action, they identified that they really wanted to work on active student engagement. That there were instances where the students were engaged, but it was more sit in your seat kind of engagement. They wanted more hands-on learning. So they identified a micro-credential that they worked on through their PLCs together, and they gave each other feedback on the lessons they created, and they helped each other with their videos, and they helped each other with the upload process. Because sometimes even, just the technical aspects of it might be a little daunting, and they helped each other with that. And so they have all earned that micro-credential. And they had a big celebration, and the principal, her name is Rachel Crowder. She is an amazing principal. She provided them with a nice dinner and t-shirts to celebrate what they've done. And they're just really a model for how you can work together as a cohort and with colleagues. It
sounds like it even models lifelong learning.
It does. It's
and
fun.
Just the value of learning in an energetic way.
Yeah.
Now, some principals have said it's changed the culture of their school, because teachers are sharing more. Their PLCs, what's happening in their conversations has changed. It's more student focused. It's more data driven. So they're seeing growth for all their students as their school moves forward. So the principals are excited about.
Wow. So actually changing the culture in the school, focusing it more on the learning environment.
And it's not just developing networks within the school. Schools across districts are developing these online networks.
Okay.
Principal cadres have been developed, talk about the things that are happening in their schools. So it's expanding across all of the districts in the region.
Which we know is so important, because one of the things we hear from teachers, educators, is oftentimes they feel like they're operating in isolation. And there really isn't an opportunity to benefit from shared learning and shared best practice. And so this creates that environment for them.
Right, and one of the main goals of this is to bring teachers together to work together on common problems of practice and to move forward with their students. So.
Yeah, excellent. So, Robert, as I mentioned in the opening of the video, this is there's a national movement, if you will, around micro-credentialing, and KVEC is leading in that space nationally with now the third summit later this year. Talk about that in the national perspective.
Okay, from the national perspective, when we had our first summit, one of the things that they brought me on to do, because Jennifer had been doing this phenomenal work with the KVEC staff moving this forward, is how can we have a conversation to expand our understanding across the state, starting with. So we decided to have a summit, make it kind of regional-based, state-based. But as folks found that we were having this at different conversations, I was being contacted from other states. You're having a summit. Is it okay if we come to that? We said, sure. We were kind of in the learning, trying to find out what was happening. So we would visit other folks, like we'd go to Tennessee, who's working on a pilot, and we spoke with Michelle Bills and watched some of their teachers in action. And had talked with her. We had spoken with folks from North Carolina, Virginia, Texas, Arkansas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and we noticed there's this conversation, national conversation around micro-credentialing. So we opened this up for our first national summit. So folks from all over the United States came to Hazard, and so we had about 60 or 70 folks the first time. But
and many kind of Skyping in for that meeting.
Some Skyped in. And as it was over, some organizations that had come, one was the National Association for the State Directors of Teacher Education under the directorship of Phil Rogers. Comment he said is, this is the national conversation we need to be having. We had members from the Council of Chief State School Officers, CCSSO. They said, we really need to take a look at this. National boards was involved. Like, these look like mini national boards. So as we were moving this forward, we had our second national summit, and it grew to about 150, 200 folks that came to have this conversation about how micro-credentials can change policy for teacher and educator preparation. How does this look for lifelong learning, continuous job-embedded professional learning? How is this going to change the way things look? So as we had spoken with states across the United States, and we had, off the top of my head, I developed a slide that had like 25 different states, organizations that we've talked to. They're using micro-credentialing, as Jennifer said, as a component of a professional learning ecosystem to change how educators not only are getting their required professional development throughout the year, but what does it mean for advanced licensure? So how can it change policy and push policy for advanced licensure? So in talking with national boards, they're looking at how can we include micro-credentialing as part of the national board process. So with our work, folks have come here to learn from us at our summits. Jennifer and I have both been invited to come to their conferences and speak, talking about how micro-credentialing's changed the dynamics of our schools. We've been invited by our Department of Education to serve on task force on how can we use micro-credentialing to change policy of a job-embedded professional learning plan that could lead to rank 2. We mentioned rank 2 is no longer a component of this, of our licensing system. But
rank 2 being the requirement for a teacher to receive a master's degree.
Right. So you have a rank 2, you can receive the master's degree via the rank 2 via the master's degree or through a continued education option plan. At one point, Commissioner Lewis had made a comment, I hope to see some districts come forward and come up with a plan leading to rank 2. Well, that caught our ear. So we contacted Rob Akers and said, we would like to come speak with you about what does that mean? Because we have an idea of what that means. So from that conversation, we've been invited to be part of the work to talk about policy here. So as we are moving forward to our third national summit that will be held in Louisville, Kentucky this year, we're expanding that out.
A little closer to the airport.
A little closer to the airport. People can shuttle over instead of rent a car and drive the 3 hours.
But they won't get the joy of being in Eastern Kentucky, unfortunately.
Actually, I had a couple of folks. They're like, oh, it's not going to be a hazard. We enjoyed the drive through Eastern Kentucky. So I said, well, maybe you can go see some horses or something.
A destination summit.
Destination summit. That's a good way to put it, yes. So there are folks coming from Texas and other places that are including how micro-credentialing is going to be a component of the relicensure program.
Okay.
We are having folks coming from the Department of Education, Kentucky's department, to talk about what a job-embedded professional learning system could look like, where micro-credentials could be part of that, leading towards a rate 2. So what has started out as a regional conversation in state we've moved into national conversations of moving our agenda forward. Currently, Jennifer and I both work on a task force with CCSSO, and one component of that work is focused solely on micro-credentialing. We've had our first task force meeting last month. We've had an online meeting, and we're meeting again in June to continue the conversation about how micro-credentialing can change the face of educator preparation.
So this is an example, yet again, of Kentucky really leading the way in an innovative space that's really needed. And so we're proud of all of the work that you're doing in this space, that you were doing before it was cool, and now it's quite cool.
Well, as long as you keep students first and get the educators what they need to make students successful, you're always going to be first. So
Which is ultimately what they really
Exactly.
want, are those opportunities.
That's right.
Yes, absolutely, and you're providing those. So we're looking forward to being at the summit in Louisville in June,
June 18th and 19th
June
at the
18th
Crown
and
Plaza
19th.
Hotel.
and you're still taking
We
reservations.
still take the registration site is still open.
Okay.
So we send out reminders every Monday. So if anyone is interested, we're going to have the link put on the holler.org soon, so they
Okay,
can
great.
go on there and look. And if they still want to register, they can register there as well.
Excellent.
And if people have questions about the event, they're free to email Robert or I. We'll gladly help think through the event and how it best fits their needs.
Excellent. And we will post it on our social media
Okay.
sites to
Thank
get the
you.
word
Thank you.
out as well. Again, just really excited about the opportunity, the promise, the hope in this work here in Eastern Kentucky is where it's starting and it's spreading, and we look forward to watching it spread. Thank you both, Robert and Jennifer, for talking with us today for 5 Minute Friday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.